The government of Nova Scotia is doing nothing to help tenants here in the province. Or are they helping them? Nova Scotia just extended the rent cap of 5% maximum increase until the end of 2027, so a 2-year extension. Does this benefit tenants? Does this benefit landlords, or neither? Stay tuned to find out. We'll be breaking this down. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Greg Pierce. I am a local realtor and investor here in the Halifax, Nova Scotia area. And today I'm bringing you breaking news in the province of Nova Scotia. The government has announced a 2-year extension on the 5% rent cap here, extending it from the end of 2025 until the end of 2027. And I will be providing some stats on what average rents are in this area, particularly focusing on Halifax, the capital city. All right, so full disclosure, I am an investor and landlord here in the Halifax area. So this does impact me. However, I see this as a beneficial move by the government. I do not believe in rent caps. However, I do think that it would be very difficult for the current premier to pull back rent caps and expect to stay in office. Every political move has its selfish reasons behind it. And once rent caps are in place, it's been proven very difficult to revoke them. So therefore, we are seeing this extension. At one point, it was as little as 2%. There were complaints that that was not enough from the landlord side and expenses were rising very rapidly. Remember, at one point we were around 8% inflation. Now we're seeing those numbers back below the 3% marker. So the 5% is now above inflation metrics. So things are starting to balance out a little bit, but the question remains, is this a good move or a bad move? So the fact that I am not a proponent of rent caps has nothing to do with this article or this update. So please, let's just disregard that. Let's focus on the objective facts here. So 5% rent cap only impacts tenants that are staying in the property. So if they are on a periodic lease or an anniversary lease and they've been there for 8 years and it rolls over month to month or year to year, this is going to impact those tenants. If you are looking for a new apartment, you are going to pay high market rent currently. However, if you're on a current fixed term lease, meaning you sign for 6 months or a year, and as soon as that lease ends, you need to sign a new lease, you're protected by this 5% rent cap as long as you remain in that property. If it turns over and new tenants are brought in, it doesn't matter what the last tenants paid. They can charge market rent or whatever rent they desire as long as there's a willing tenant to pay that amount. So in conclusion, I think this is still a beneficial thing. I think it's going to protect tenants that are in anniversary leases or periodic leases currently. However, if you're a new tenant or looking to get into a new apartment, this does nothing to protect you unless you find a way to get on an anniversary or a periodic lease, which landlords really aren't doing anymore. Or if you find a way to stay on for another term lease after your first term expires, you're still held to that 5%. So I do think it's better than nothing for tenants. I do think it's a reasonable amount at 5%. I know inflation's below that, but we've been above that. And I do think that's kind of a fair balance. On the flip side, let's look at it from a landlord's perspective. So I think for landlords, this is a fair measurement. I think it does keep up with inflation. The issue becomes if you have someone that's been paying $600 a month and you've been doing these 5% increases, it's going to take you a very long time and you may never reach market rents. So that becomes the issue. So meanwhile, insurance, mortgage payments are going up, property taxes are going up faster than that 5%. So that becomes the issue where landlords are viewed as bad people for wanting to get tenants out, but no one in their right mind would ever have an apartment building or rent their house out and be losing money month over month just to make sure that a tenant is happy. In a perfect world, we would do that, but nobody is going to run a losing business. It just doesn't make sense and defeats the whole purpose of investing in the first place. And that's a conversation for a whole nother day because I know there's a lot of people that believe that housing is a right and should not be something that people can profit off of. On the flip side, we have to look at how does this benefit landlords? Well, I think the 5% is a reasonable number. Is it enough for some of those people in that situation that I just mentioned, paying only $600 a month? Probably not. And the solution for a lot of people now, or a lot of landlords, is getting tenants on fixed term leases, which again is another hot topic in our province, or finding ways to remove old tenants through things like getting family members to move in, whether that's legit or not. Rent evictions, which again is a legal process through the city in order to do proper renovations, remove those tenants, and sometimes that is needed, but there's other times where that is solely the reason to get the tenants out so they can get new ones in and pay high rent again. Or another common term used in the investor world is what's called cash for keys. This is essentially a process where a landlord would offer a set amount of money to the landlords to agree to be out by a certain date. So if you leave within 45 days, I will be willing to give you $3,000 lump sum once you are out of the property. So these are different tactics that are used right now by landlords in order to get maybe those tenants that are paying $600 a month up to, $1,800, $2,000 a month and really recover their costs that way, as opposed to taking someone who's paying $600 a month and waiting for years of compounding that 5% year over year and likely never catch up to market rents. So on both sides, there are challenges. On both sides, there are benefits. At the end of the day, I'm not surprised that the government decided to do that. But now let's turn to see what average rents are and how this can be misconstrued in the market. So we're gonna look at average rents in Halifax, specifically the capital city of Nova Scotia. And the average 1-bedroom rent right now is $2,050 a month. The average 2-bedroom is $2,669 a month. Now, a huge caveat here is this is available listings. That means that these are new apartments up for rent. So these rent prices do not take into account that person that's paying $600 a month because they've been in that apartment for the last 8 years. So it's really important to know this is new listings. So these rents are going to be at market rent. These landlords or property owners are going to be charging market rent in these scenarios, and it's not taking into account all the old stock of tenants that have been in these places for, upwards of a decade. So that's a really important caveat because these numbers get thrown around a lot in the media and are used as average rents, but really these are active listings, new rents that are being posted with new tenants moving in. So it's not really a clear picture and often gets misconstrued and utilized by the media to create a much darker picture of the rental market here. Now, as previously mentioned, while there is a softening in the rental market and there is more housing supply coming, that doesn't mean that there isn't large growth. So in a 1-bed, the average asking price for a 1-bedroom apartment here in Halifax has increased by 10% year over year and 18.2% for a 2-bedroom year over year. And again, those are asking prices. Those are not existing stock with existing tenants in place. So let me know your comments below. Do you think this is a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing? Are you a tenant? Are you a landlord? Let me know your feelings. I think overall this is probably a smart thing to keep in place for the time being until more housing is built. But ultimately that's going to be the biggest challenge, is supply and demand. And at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of criticism from both sides here. There's going to be landlords that are unhappy. There's going to be tenants that are unhappy. But I do think that the whole system needs somewhat of an overhaul moving forward. And it doesn't seem like the government's really willing to do too much in that regard and trying to keep status quo. So let me know in the comments what you think. As always, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one.